Good evening and welcome to the Wakefield School Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 9th, 2016. I would like to call this meeting to order. We will start with the reading of the mission statement. The mission of the Wakefield Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students to be lifelong learners who are meaningful contributors to society and meet their academic, social, civic, and physical potential. Next up is public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we move on to the consent agenda. We have no items there. Student Advisory Council, we will skip tonight. And next up is the chairman's comments. As we talked about at the last meeting, to submit an SOI for the high school now, we have to officially take a vote. And the Board of Selectmen will be taking a vote after us, I believe. So, do we have a motion for that?
Yes, move that the school committee approve the submission of a statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for Wakefield Memorial High School.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, Mr.
I just
Kenny.
want to be clear, and this is, I guess, more for the public than anything else. It's my understanding that this vote is really just to say to the MSBA, yeah, we're interested, and it doesn't bind us to anything, no obligations, no legal obligations whatsoever. It's really just, let's take a shot and see if we get invited into the pipeline, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Voted unanimously. Next up is superintendent's remarks.
Okay, so I'd like to start first by talking about the district educator evaluation data that was released recently. And what I have communicated out to the school committee is the district information, which is that 300 educators were evaluated, and the breakdown in terms of the evaluation of performance were 7% exemplary, 89% proficient, 4% needs improvement, and 0 unsatisfactory. And I just think it's really important that I note and continue to reiterate that proficient is what we consider the rigorous expected level of performance, and ultimately the standard we're setting for effective teaching practice in the Wakefield Public Schools. So it's a very, very high bar, so I'm really pleased that 89% of our teachers have reached that bar. And then maybe just talking a little bit about some of the other levels. I'm glad that we have 0 unsatisfactory educators, because if they're unsatisfactory, they really shouldn't be with our students. So that's good news. Needs improvement, I think it's important to note that this is the overall rating on 4 standards that we're talking about here. Within any one standard, when you start looking at all of the different elements, every educator has areas that need improvement and that they're working on in their self-assessment, so different elements. But if someone gets a needs improvement as an overall rating on the 4 standards, that means they just haven't quite met that high level of proficiency that we're expecting, and I hope and believe that most are very close to that, and principals are working with educators that might be in that place. The 7% exemplary, exemplary is really around the ability to model a certain element and or a standard. So when you think of the exemplary practice, that's someone that would lead professional development in a certain area, or that if you're speaking of different elements in instruction, that person would be someone you'd want to bring new teachers or other teachers into that classroom to see how a certain element is done extremely well. So really, really proud to say that the overall ratings, for exemplary, was 7%. That's a good number, and so I'm quite satisfied with those. And coming up this week at our instructional leadership team meeting, we'll be talking about each school is kind of looking at their school's results. We're just talking a little bit more about norming across the district, making sure we're all on the same page. So, does anyone have any questions about educator evaluation?
Just quickly, if and I know it's not the case, but let's say that all 7 exemplary teachers were in one school. That would have to almost reflect on their leadership, that they're the principal of that school. So does the principal's evaluation, it'll tie back to their people's evaluations at all?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So I just want to clarify, it's 7%, not 7 people.
Okay.
Just to make sure that's clarified. But that's a really good question. I think So is that a reflection on the principal? I would say to some degree, of course, the professional development and learning that's happening in coaching in a certain school certainly impacts a teacher's development to its leadership, but that's not the only factor. I would say that's maybe one of a number of factors. I think it's probably the best answer to
It would
that.
just be interesting if you found that there was one particular leader that maybe
Is
then you.
developing or cultivating.
And then that would help you focus on them and say, okay, well, what are you doing that's different to help the others do the same thing? I would think it would be a really good way to use the tool, that's all.
Yeah, that's some great feedback. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
So, I first thank you for giving us this presentation and answering Chris's question, because I had a similar kind of question about the idea of exemplary. So, but my first question is, tell us what you think of this evaluation tool. I mean, you, as an educator, have gone probably through many different systems of evaluation. This is the state standard now. Is it useful for teachers, and is it useful? Are these numbers useful for the public to understand the quality of our teaching force?
So those are two very distinctly different questions, so I'll answer them both. I think on the first question, I do think that this is the best evaluation tool we've had yet in my career. And the reason is because it's based on rubrics. And whenever you work with rubrics, you get clear performance descriptors for every element at every standard. So you can really read about or understand clear descriptors of what it means to be proficient, or what it means to be exemplary, or what it means to be in the needs improvement category. So whenever you have clear language and descriptors, I think that's really helpful. It's helpful for students in the classroom. It's helpful for educators evaluating your performance. It's a great self-assessment tool. I always say a rubric is the best teaching tool that you have. If you want, I was just talking with someone about that today. If you want to really understand more about, what the performance is, read the rubric. It's a great teaching tool. So I'd say it's a great performance tool, an evaluation tool. Is it a good tool in terms of I think your second question was kind of about communicating out. Not so much, because one of the things that is very difficult is for the norming that goes on within is critical.
Yeah.
So that, for example, if you have more than one evaluator in a school, so schools that have multiple evaluators, they really need to be seeing the same things and rating the same ways. Then across schools, and we're working on this in Wakefield, we need to become really, really consistent within our own school district. But it's not as easy to compare to, say, Burlington, or North Andover, or Reading, or whomever, because they might be looking at things a little bit differently. So in terms of its meaning to the public, without the rubrics in front of you, I don't know how clear the meaning is, or how deep the meaning is in terms of the public reporting. So
Yeah,
to
that point, I think the other thing that gets lost, I think sometimes, is the difference between evaluating educators in a public school system and the kinds of evaluations that I think most men and women in the community are used to, which is a private business, If your average person working for a corporation, if you told that person that 89% of their employees were proficient, 7% exemplary, 4% needs improvement, that would probably
translate very differently.
It would translate
Yeah.
differently, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's
Agreed.
part of it. And so just two other questions. One was related to our professional development. How aligned is our professional development to this set of standards?
So very aligned, which is
Okay.
another reason that I think that it's such a powerful evaluation tool, because with the rubrics, it breaks down, as you can see in the superintendent's rubric that you look at, it breaks down practice
Yep.
into 4 standards, into different indicators, and then really down very specifically into elements. And so you can really get great data from this to say, hey, this is a place that a number of educators have identified as an area that they want to really work on, an area of growth. And you can use that data to inform professional development. We never really had anything quite that specific before. So I find it really helpful for professional development.
Thanks. I think that's an important point because I think it's important for the public to understand that, you know, these are all part of a coherent strategy around professional development and teacher development and teacher retention. And then my final question has to do with our goals around these evaluations. So do we have you know, I looked at some of the other communities and some had a lower percentage of exemplary, some had a higher. Do we have a goal for the number or percentage of our teachers, our educators who are rated exemplary?
So we really don't, because I think, my own opinion on that is if I put, this Thursday, I'm meeting with the instructional leadership team across the district. If I put an expectation out there, I expect a certain number of educators to be exemplary, or expect a certain amount to be proficient and so forth. I think that would really limit the organic or authentic nature of the evaluation, which is it's kind of a reminder, you know, it's largely a self-directed process or a growth model where educators are really setting their own goals, doing a self-assessment, reflecting on his or her practice, and then working and building in this growth model throughout the year. So I think it's very important that it's an authentic process, and that I don't, as the superintendent, say, you know, my expectation is we'll have a certain percentage. It really should be the numbers should be real. Of course, the optimum situation, I would say, if you wanted my perfect scenario, is that we would have, you know, 90% at proficiency, you know, maybe 10% exemplary, and 0 needs improvement.
Yeah.
But that's like a, you know, that's not realistic. I think in the real workplace, you know, you have, you know, young educators coming right out of college that are going to need a couple of years to really meet that high level of proficiency. You know, so I think, you know, so I think in answer to your question, I would rather not put specific expectations or goals on how these numbers will work out, or percentages will work out at the end. But what I will say is this, and do say, is that, you know, our goal is that all of our teachers are striving for and meeting that high level of proficiency, that we need to not be fearful, we have to be courageous about giving someone a needs improvement evaluation if it is so warranted. I think that's very, very important that we're honest about that. And sometimes that is courageous, because it's not always an easy thing to do, but we need to be able to do that where it's warranted. And then on the exemplary, that we can't forget the importance of highlighting those teacher leaders or principal leaders who are really modeling many of those elements and are really setting that standard. There was an article I read some time ago, and it was called The Irreplaceables. And the whole idea of it was that it's important to recognize people that are at that exemplary level and give them feedback and really recognize them for what they're doing and their importance and value, because you don't want to lose those people. And we always talk about hiring well, retaining and developing, and part of that retaining great teachers is really valuing those leaders in your system. So
Thank you.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, very much.
All right, thank you. So next on my agenda is we're going to be hearing both from our Director of Athletics, Health and Wellness, and our Wakefield Academy Director. But let's start with athletics, and I'll ask Brennan Kent to join us at the table to give us an update on all things athletics.
Thank you, Kim. First of all, I just want to thank everybody here. Haven't been here since I first got hired way back in the summertime, so just excited to be back here. And I just have to say, before I get going on the budget, I just want to thank the entire community of Wakefield. When I left my former school district, I got to say, one of the things that I was most nervous about was leaving behind all those relationships that I was able to build with all the families. And so I was really hoping to do the same thing here, and I'm only 6 months in, and I already feel like I'm family here. So I just want to extend my deepest gratitude to everybody here in this room and everybody, you know, watching at home, all the families. I'm just so thrilled to be here. I really feel like I'm really developing a great relationship with all the high school families. I would really love to, start extending that to the middle school and elementary families as well. So if you have a son or daughter in the elementary or middle schools, watch out. I'm going to start to be around. So I hope to meet everybody and really just continue creating some great relationships. Right now, obviously, as Dr. Smith alluded to, I'm going to speak on behalf of our budget and just some updates on what's going on with athletics. So very quickly, I'm just going to give a brief update of some of our successes. And I know, to me, success isn't always defined by wins and losses, but a lot of people like to hear about those things, and we've been very fortunate to have some winning teams this past fall and winter. So our league champs so far, we just won the league championship last week on wrestling. Tremendous venue last Wednesday night. Our boys basketball has clinched a share of the title. They're actually playing tonight. If they win, they can win the title outright. So best of luck. I'm sure they're probably at halftime right now, so I hope they're doing well. Girls cross country won the league title this past fall. Our golf team won the Middlesex League Shootout for the first time in school history. Boys cross country placed third at the states. Soccer team advanced all the way to the sectional finals, first time since 1997. Dance team placed fifth, and probably one of the things I'm most proud of is they won the MIAA Academic Excellence Award for one of the highest GPAs in the state. Chair team placed fifth in the state. Girls hockey, they haven't won a game in 2 years. They've won 3 so far this year, so great for the girls hockey team. Swim team had a state champion swimmer. Volleyball had the most winning season in program history. A few other kind of updates, what's going on in athletics. Very grateful. I just want to extend a thank you to the Savings Bank. They paid for an update and a renovation of our scoreboard at Galvin Middle School. So our soccer team for the first half of the year didn't have a scoreboard, and talk about just great people in the community. The Savings Bank stepped right up and paid for the whole thing. So just very, very happy for our soccer players and families, and grateful to the Savings Bank. Just a few other things that I'm trying to do as athletic director. I'm really trying to improve communication with our community and our families. So I've created a Facebook account and Twitter account. I'm not sure. I'm sure many people in this room probably follow me, but I'm really trying to update everybody as much as possible on what's going on in our school. I've tried to improve communication through newsletters and emails as well. I hosted a kind of silly talk about budget mattress fundraiser. We raised $4,300 to try to start up a strength and conditioning program. So kind of silly little fundraiser, but $4,300 more than we had before. So those are just kind of some brief updates on where we've been going since September to now in February. Moving forward, next up, I just kind of really want to clarify how our athletic budget operates. So I'm sure everybody in this room is aware, but I get a lot of questions from parents, and I don't think everybody really truly understands how our athletic budget operates. So our athletic budget operates on a revolving account where there's money going in, money coming out. And where the money is coming from, our two main sources are user fees, which is $260 per sport, $780 cap per family per year. And the other source of funds is through ticket sales. Really our two revenue-generating sports are football and basketball. So I'll get into that in a second, but I've really been trying to promote those sports in particular. Really, I'm trying to promote every sport, but really try to get people out to those games because those funds help fund all of our sports, not just those particular sports. What our athletic budget covers. So a revolving account covers transportation for our teams, which is really our biggest expense, and I'm going to get into that in further detail in a little bit. Equipment for our teams, athletic trainers' salaries, secondary athletic trainers. So sometimes our athletic trainer, we might have 2 games going on at once, and obviously Sue Corshane, who's tremendous, she's absolutely phenomenal, but she can't be in 2 places at once. So sometimes we have to. Yeah, I know. It's.
Yeah, talk to her.
Yeah, I know. We gotta talk to her. Yeah. So sometimes we do have to hire an additional athletic trainer. Like for example, last week we had a hockey game at Kasabuski. We had wrestling at the field house. So we needed to hire additional trainer for certain dates. Police details, fire details, janitor custodial details on weekends, DPW details sometimes. Another big expense, really big one, is facility rentals, which I'll get into in a minute. Hockey, ice time for our hockey team. We don't have a pool, so we have to rent from Malden High School. Golf course, obviously we don't have a golf course, and indoor tennis during the spring when it's still, if there's still snow on the ground, we have to pay for our tennis team to get going at an indoor facility. Athletic insurance plan. So we have a plan specifically for athletics. Reconditioning of our equipment. So at the end of the football season, we have to send all of our helmets out to get inspected and reconditioned to ensure that they're safe. We also send out a lot of our jerseys if they're ripped or torn to get stitched up. MIAA, Middlesex League dues, and MSAA dues. So those are all the organizations that we're membership schools of. So with that membership comes a due. Tournament invitational entry fees. So during the course of the season, a lot of our teams like to go out to tournaments. Track is a big one. There's always different cross-country invitationals on the weekends and track invitationals. So if we want to do that in addition to our normal schedule, there's usually typically fees that come with that. Game day operations. So obviously, if we're selling tickets to a game, ticket takers, clock operators, announcers, I don't have on there, but also obviously referees and officials. Athletic trophies and awards at the end of the season. Facility upgrades and maintenance, and that's something, again, I got to say thank you to the town. They're really terrific on that. They really cover a lot of the maintenance and upgrades of our facilities. If it's something small, like a net's broken, we'll go out that day. If it's something short term where we need a replacement right away, we'll cover that. But the town's really great about that. So again, thank you to the town of Wakefield. Family ID, it's an online registration software where if you want to sign up for a sport before the season starts, you got to sign up and register online. That's where parents fill out their consent forms. So we pay a small fee for that. And then just really small miscellaneous sports items that come up throughout the course of the year. So that's where our money is going for people that have questions regarding that. Up next, I hear this one all the time is, I have to pay this coach more money or that coach less money, and that's actually not covered in the athletic revolving account, so that's covered in the normal school budget. And those salaries are all on a pay scale that's determined by the union. So I get that question all the time: is how do you determine how a certain coach is paid? That's predetermined through the pay scale. Again, I know everybody in this room probably knows that, but for the people watching at home, my salary is not covered through the revolving account, nor is my secretary's. So those are all things that are covered in the school budget. Our current financial state. So year to date, we've brought in $235,640 in revenues. That's all ticket sales and user fees. Our total expenses year to date is $186,438. So we have net income of $49,000. And that, off just looking on paper, it might seem like we're, doing great. But we're really going to come in right kind of on target because our third season, spring sports season, a lot of families going to start to hit their family caps. So we're not going to have that user fee revenue like we did in the first two seasons. Also, our two revenue generating sports, our football and basketball, obviously we're not going to get that in the spring season. So we are $49,000 ahead at this point, but that's really going to be key going into the third season because, like I said, we're not going to have as much revenue coming in. So our projections right now, we look good. It's going to be razor thin, tight as usual, but we should make it through. So that's where we stand right now. Like I said, we're not going to have that revenue coming in, but we are $49,000 ahead at this point in the year. Moving forward, what else are we doing to bring in money? What have I done this year personally? As I mentioned, I've really been trying to promote our football games and basketball games. We've done fairly well looking at previous numbers from previous years. This Thanksgiving, I have to say, our town was tremendous. So the policy for Thanksgiving Day game is whatever you sell in tickets pre-sales before the day of the game, each town keeps. So whatever Wakefield sells in Wakefield, we keep. Whatever Melrose sells in Melrose, we keep. Melrose keeps. In the town of Wakefield, we paid up $6,748, which was actually more in pre-sales than in Melrose. So hats off to everybody in Wakefield for buying their tickets in Wakefield, keeping their money in the Wakefield public school system. Absolutely tremendous. That really helped our budget out a lot. Our basketball games have been fairly well attended. Football is really great, especially at the beginning of the year. Trying to increase participation numbers, trying to get information out to parents before the season begins. So I sent out an email before, obviously, winter registration and before fall registration. I'm trying to promote it through social media. I have plans for, at the end of the year, to really get out to the 8th grade parents to make them aware of our sports, because a lot of parents, I think, aren't necessarily aware of it, so they don't sign their kids up before it's too late. So really trying to increase participation numbers. Trying to be financially responsible in terms of buying different materials throughout the course of the year. Some coaches have asked me for certain things, and I try to give our coaches and our kids in particular everything they need, but I do have to be financially responsible, so I have had to say no on a few items. We've made great use, and I gotta give my secretary, Christine Collins, a lot of credit for this. We have some school vans and school buses that we use for our smaller teams. So for example, our golf team, swim team. So that does not, we don't have to pay up that huge fee for transportation for those, because we have those on site. So that has saved us a ton of money. We've kind of scheduled our transportation so that if our boys are playing at 4 in Burlington and our other team is playing at 7, the bus will take one team over, come back, shuttle the other team back and forth. So that has saved us a tremendous amount of money. So I really got to give hats off to our coaches and my secretary, Christine Collins. They've really done a tremendous job with that, saving us a lot of money shuttling back and forth. So those are a few ways in which we're trying to cut our costs. We're trying to increase the money coming in. Other ways financially, we're trying to support our programs. I've been trying to team up with our booster organizations. Whatever kind of fundraisers they're doing, I'm trying to promote, because ultimately all that money is eventually going back to our kids, which is all I want. Is as long as it's going back to our kids, I'll try to promote it, everything I can do. So I've been fortunate to develop some great relationships with our booster organization so far. I really hope that continues. Without their support, I don't know where we would be, because they're absolutely tremendous. I have been reaching out to a lot of the local businesses. As I mentioned, Savings Bank really stepped up big in the fall. Honeydew Donuts sold all of our football tickets pre-sales this year, which was tremendous. So I can't say enough about Honeydew Donuts at Wakefield. They've really been helpful. As I mentioned, mattress sale fundraiser, $4,300. So that was great. Thank you for everyone who came out and bought a mattress. Thank you. What else are we doing to grow our programs? In a second, you're going to hear from Jeff Boyd. He's been an absolute delight to work with. He's really on page with what I'm trying to do as athletic director, trying to build up a lot of our youth programs. Dan McGrath from the recreation department has been terrific. Our principal down at the middle school, Adam Colatoni, has been really great, trying to do whatever he can to help out. And then a lot of the local youth sports programs have been great. I've been, like I said, fortunate to develop some good relationships with everybody running our, from the WBA to the youth soccer. They've just been fabulous to work with. Really trying to promote, like I said, our high school athletic programs to our 8th graders, and I'm really going to promote that hard in the springtime. I've been trying to invite our middle school families out to our high school games, try to create some excitement. And really that's I have to mention our high school coaches have done a fabulous job as well. I've been really pushing them hard to get involved in the youth programs. Our football coach, hockey coach, volleyball coach, soccer coach, and wrestling coach all ran free youth clinics this past year. So that has been terrific. I hope that continues, because I really want to create a positive relationship between the high school athletic program and any of our youth programs in the town. So, up next is just a quick graph of our participation numbers. It's a little small on the screen there, so you probably can't read it at home, but the numbers from this year are relatively consistent with last year. I'm hoping that there's a spike next year and the year to follow, because as I mentioned, really trying to increase those numbers. There's been a dip in some sports, but where there's been a dip, there's been an increase in other sports. Overall, it's been pretty consistent from last year. Concerns for the athletic budget. Right now, as I preluded to, my number one concern is transportation. Transportation costs, the rates have gone up 27% in 2 years. So last year, FY15, it was $55 per hour for a North Reading transportation bus. This year it was $65 an hour, and next year it's going to be $70 an hour, 4-hour minimums. So as I mentioned, with our team shuttling back and forth, that saves us a tremendous amount of money. But transportation is a huge cost. I know I've communicated that. I've been working with Mike Piffling, who will probably speak on that behalf at some point this year as well. That is really our number one concern right now. So I know Mike has some good ideas on how we can save money. Our coaches have been fabulous. Another concern is hockey is ice time, which is really a concern for almost every school. There's just not enough rinks to go around. Right now, we're paying $260 an hour for ice, which is actually consistent with what most rinks are. But I'm just concerned about some of the other things that are going on with our hockey contract, which I'll get into in a little bit. Increases as well are costs for referees, uniforms, equipment. Really just overall is the costs of everything are increasing year in, year out. Our money coming in has remained the same. So right now for this year, we're looking good, we're looking fine. But at some point, I am concerned that the costs are going to outweigh what we have coming in. So that is a legitimate concern, especially with increases like you see in transportation. Just some ideas, thoughts on how we could potentially save money. And these aren't all necessarily my own ideas and thoughts. A lot of these are things that I got from other athletic directors, other schools. So our insurance plan currently is $13,000. I've reached out to some other athletic directors, and they've told me that they've been able to bundle their insurance plan in with the school's insurance plan or the town's insurance plan. So that's just one possibility that I would like to explore. Making our school vans and buses more accessible to our smaller athletic teams. As I mentioned, that's a great way to save money for us. We do send out, as I mentioned, our uniforms to be reconditioned at the end of the year. Something I've talked with our coaches and our equipment manager is just storing that on site. Obviously, football helmets, we need to send that stuff out because it needs to be inspected, but right now, we're sending out soccer uniforms, baseball uniforms, items that I think personally we could have either our kids wash at home and just store on site, or wash in-house here. Even just sending it out to a local wash machine, wash laundromat or anything like that, I think it would save us a lot of money, because right now we're spending about $200 per sport reconditioning our uniforms. Different hockey venue, as I preluded to, I know that this is a public forum, so I don't want to give away too much. I know there's a lot of politics involved with hockey ice contracts, but I do believe that our school can do better in terms of our contract. Right now, we're not getting any of the gate money at our games, so ticket sales the venue is keeping, which not all venues do that, not all hockey arenas do that, and that is in our contract. So that's something that I would really like to explore, and I am already exploring. I think we can really save money and bring more money in, because we really do get great crowds at our hockey game, and that's all money that we're missing out on right now because of our current contract. Again, I also preluded to having to hire an additional athletic trainer when we have conflicting games. So one thing that I would like to do is possibly renegotiate our contract there to see if they can give us some type of deal, Hallmark Health on that. Another idea, again, it's not my idea, I don't want to create a rift with anybody at all. The town has been terrific, but I know some other schools in the area, as far as detailed officers at games, they split the cost, so, they'll pay for 3 officers at a game, and the town will send down, if there's any officers, down at the headquarters that, are not on, they're on duty, but they're just down there, they'll send them down as kind of backup at the games. Again, that's coming from other schools. For our facilities in which we're paying rental fees, cutting back from 5 days a week to 4 days, again, I don't want to do that because I don't want to shortchange our kids, but one thing I'm trying to do is create a strength conditioning program, so just the thought is that 5th day could be a strength conditioning day, could potentially save us some money, and I think that's something that our coaches would be interested in. Up next is just kind of how we analyze our financial data. So right now, we're a little old school. Going back the past, I don't even know how many binders I have down there, probably 20. They're these big, 10-inch 3-ring binders where all our invoices get put in, which is a great way of collecting and storing data. But when it goes to analyzing that data, it's very difficult to go back, to see if, I wanted to find out, how much of our budget percentage-wise we spent on transportation in the month of November, December. How much did we spend on football, baseball? That's all things that I would like to do with the click of a mouse instead of having to go back by hand and add things up and calculate it the old-fashioned way, which is there's nothing wrong with that. It's just very, very time-consuming. And I've talked to Mike Piffling about that. One idea was to, get set up on a Quicken Books, Quicken software to help us analyze that data. And the last thing, I'm not suggesting this at all, but just an idea of what an increase in user fees would look like. A 5% increase would equate to $16,500 increase overall. I don't think we're there yet, and the last thing I want to do is increase user fees, especially on my first year. I would not be very popular. So I don't want to do that, but again, that's just what it would look like. A 5% increase would equate to over $16,000 to the overall budget. And those are just some general ideas on how we could save money and put us in a better spot financially for our athletic programs. So right now, I know I kind of probably went over time. I wanted to be sufficient, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So I don't know.
Questions?
Yes.
Mr. Leakos?
Thank you for such a thorough presentation. It's really good. I thought when you said your first concern when you took this new job, I thought you were going to say was maintaining family relationships. Right?
Yeah, that's out the window. Yeah, that's already been severed. Yeah.
So one question is, and it just goes to your thoughts, and I really do appreciate the creativity through which you approached some of the financial issues. I think that's the best way to approach it. Why not just look at everything and uncover everything and see what we can do differently to try to save some money, and so and look at costs and revenue in new ways. So several of us were part of the ongoing conversations with the booster parents about among other things, about user fees. And one of the things that several of them asked for, and I'm sure you've talked to several of them since taking a new position, is can we get more transparency in the way that we present how the money is coming in and then how it's going out. And I realize there's a lot of complexity in that, but I think if we're thinking about looking at user fees over the next couple of years, the more information we can provide to the parents, the more credible we're going to be in making the case for what those are. So
User fees, I know, is a very touchy subject because obviously some sports are more expensive than others. In particular, the ones that I hear all the time is hockey in particular, because it's a very expensive sport, and track on the other extreme. And I just want to be very kind of sensitive of that, because I try to look at this from the parents and the kids' perspective instead of, I try to take myself out of the athletic director's role. It can be very easy to say, well, hockey should pay, 10 times the amount of everybody else because they're 10 times more expensive. But if you look at it from the kids' point of view, right now, our hockey team gets the least amount of resources given to them. They have limited amount of ice time, limited amount of, they have to pay for all their equipment. So I want to be very cautious of going down that road as far as a tiered system. I know that's one way that Melrose actually went to this a few years ago, where they went to a tiered system where, level 5 pays X amount of dollars and all the way down pays less. And hockey is, in my opinion, really getting the short end of the stick because they're paying so much, but yet we as a school are giving them so little. As I mentioned, paying for all their equipment, they get an hour a day, which, it might seem sufficient, but by the time you get on the ice and warm up, you're down to, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really not enough. And I like to flip the bill a little bit. We don't have our own hockey rink. If we were to have our own hockey rink, we could be renting that out, making hand over fist money, and all of a sudden hockey would be like the greatest sport ever. It could, honestly. And so, I just want to be very cognizant of that. I don't want to punish teams, and I use that term very loosely. I don't want to see teams, have to dish out so much money when they're getting limited resources. And the same goes for our swim team. We're renting a facility for them. And again, they're getting very limited practice time. I do completely understand, where some of those other parents are coming from. Track in particular, if all you got to do is do the numbers, 200 plus kids in the program times X amount of dollars per user fee. I do understand that, but at this point, I don't want to pit teams against each other.
Sure.
I want to create a unified athletic program. So. That is definitely something I'm exploring, and I definitely do want to be transparent with that, but I just want to be cautious of not, pinning any particular team into a corner.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, totally understand it. Thank you. I just asked one other question. So,
yeah.
This question, when you were talking about, the football helmets, it made me think of all the attention that's been paid to,
Yes.
concussion, concerns around concussions, and injury. I mean, of course, injury is a danger in every sport, but there's been a lot of attention paid, in particular to football.
Yes.
So, do we have, as a school district or in conjunction with the MIA and others, good protocols around concussion?
Yes.
And is this something that you're able to communicate to parents who have concerns about that?
Yes, actually. So I instituted this school year a mandatory. I try to promote it as mandatory. We can't force parents to come, but we have a parent night every sports season. So I had one in the fall and then again in the winter, and I'm going to have it again in the spring. And the keynote speaker every time is our athletic trainer, Sue Corshane, who I have to say is absolutely phenomenal, communicating with parents, communicating with the athlete, coaches, and our school nurse, and even our guidance department, especially in particular around concussions. She just updated our protocol and our policies, which by MIAA standards has to be updated every 2 years as it is. So it actually just was updated this August. And I can't say enough about how terrific she is, and really our coaches are phenomenal too. My greatest concern is having coaches that try to force kids back into action before they're ready. And our coaches are not like that at all, which I'm very proud of, because I don't ever want to see a kid put in, harm's way. So our coaches, our entire athletic staff has been terrific. So
Thank you.
Mr. Callahan?
You kind of answered one of my questions I wrote
Yes.
down. So if, in your opinion, if we did build our own rink, we'd have no problem selling that ice time?
Ice time is very difficult to come by. So I don't think we would have an issue renting it out at all. Teams are always looking for ice time, even down to the youth level. There's just not enough rinks around. So
Okay.
I hope we someday build our own rink. I know our hockey people would be ecstatic. So
I just know there's a lot of discussion about it.
yeah,
You've mentioned a couple of times this insurance program,
yes.
and I'm unclear as to what are you insuring?
So our insurance policy covers, the major reason why we have our own insurance plan is for catastrophic injuries. So, for example, if a kid ever got paralyzed or, God forbid, if there was a death or anything like that, that's what our insurance plan covers. We have planned through Morin Insurance, and I've reached out to a number of the other schools, actually every school in the Middlesex League, and a lot of schools do have their own insurance plan, but a few of them have kind of bundled their plan in with the school's plan, and I'm not sure the logistics of how that would work. That's something that, again, I'd probably have to sit down with Mike to see what our school plan is, or our town plan is, but.
Right. But it's an additional rider for,
Yes. Yes.
beyond, above and beyond what the town already carries?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So,
I just was unsure what what it was. I didn't know if it was like a supplemental health insurance, but you're talking about just catastrophic injury.
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you.
yeah.
Mr. Markham?
Thank you. So for your first presentation to the school committee, you certainly, you got an A+.
Oh, thank you.
It really was, as Mr. Liakos mentioned, really transparent and very, very easy to follow.
Thank you.
And very well done. And so certainly don't hesitate to share this with families or any other audience that you may
Absolutely.
that you may be able to get in front of. And also some of the creativity around some of your approach to things.
Thank you.
Is a breath of fresh air. So really, thank you and congratulations to you and the coaching staff. One thing I just wanted to point out in particular is the community presence. Certainly with the Facebook pages and with the Twitter feeds, it's really brought some prominence
Thank you.
to sports, particularly at the high school, of course. But as you said,
Yeah.
you'll get to that. But it is very noticeable. It is something that a lot of parents and kids talk about.
Thank you
And
very
with some great pride. Even in the occasional time when the score just isn't going our way.
Yeah.
we still get the Facebook
Thank you.
post
Thank
about
you.
it, and it's really keeping the community in touch. So that's a very visible part of the last 6 months. So
Thank you.
for that.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Tiro?
Thanks again for your presentation. I echo my colleagues' comments about the creativity especially. And I want to just highlight one thing you said in response to Mr. Liakos' question, because I think it is so important. What you had said about that student-centered metric.
Yeah.
I think, I know that I do, and I think I could probably say my colleagues share that as, something that probably the most on the forefront in our thinking. We can talk about policy, but at the end of the day, that sort of student-centered metric is really what we should all be talking about in that calculus. One thing I wanted to say also was that I couldn't believe it took us this long to get such a great social media presence for our athletics. I don't know how you do it, because that updates faster than my ESPN app. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to, when you first came on, one of the things that you walked into was that ongoing discussion with the booster groups with respect to our volunteer support staff and how they're compensated. The committee voted to adopt a policy, and I was wondering if you couldn't talk about the implementation of that, kind of the feedback that you've received and whether it's been working and effective.
Absolutely. So I think it has been effective, really very effective. Really no problems. There were a few issues right at the beginning because it kind of got put into place at the last second. So our fall coaches, there was a little confusion on getting us, we talked about those ranges, giving us the range from $1 to X amount of dollars. So some of those contracts got sent out a little bit late, but as far as the winter season goes, it's been smooth sailing. We had that conversation. I had a preseason coaches meeting with all the head coaches and then all the head and assistant coaches. I've been in communication with all the booster clubs, so they understand the process, and it's, like I said, been smooth sailing, no issues at all. So
Great, thank you.
I think everybody's pleased with what we came up with. By the way.
Anyone else? Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brendan.
I'm sorry, I probably went over time a little bit, but
I just want to commend Brendan on an absolutely first-class, outstanding job as our new athletic director this year. Thank you, Brendan.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, I would like to bring up Jeff Boyd, our new director of the Wakefield Academy.
Tough act to follow.
He's doing great things too, so.
Oh, thanks. No, Brendan and I do a lot of work together, and it's just been a great experience so far for myself as well. First and foremost, thank you for inviting me back here to kind of give you an update on where we've come since I came into this role in the middle of August. I'm just gonna be totally honest with you, I'm having an absolute blast. This job has turned out to be more fun than I ever expected it to be. Throughout my teaching career, friends and family would always ask me, how do I like teaching? And my answer was always, I get to hang out with kids all day. I mean, it's great. I mean, how much better can it get than that? And people ask me now, former teachers that I used to work with, how do you like the new job? Well, while I might not have the level of contact with the kids that I used to have anymore, now I'm able to give kids things that they genuinely want to be a part of. And for me, it doesn't really get any better than that. So that's where we're heading. We've expanded in a number of different areas since the beginning of the school year. So I'm just going to take you through a couple of those things and show you where we're at. One of my goals on my entry plan was to create a new logo. So slide number 1 has that logo up there for everyone to see. We have that now up on our Facebook page as well, on our newly renovated website that can be accessed through the Wakefield Public Schools homepage. So that's kind of become the identifying logo that we were hoping for the Academy. Just a quick overview of our Academy before and after school programs. We have before school and after school programs at the Doyle and all elementary schools. For the before school program, students can drop into that. They do not need to be registered. However, registered participants in the before school program do attend at a discounted rate. The Galvin Middle School doesn't have a before school program, but it does have an after school program that we call Club Galvin. Every single program at every school across the district, before or after school, has seen a significant increase from the last school year. So right there, the Academy has grown quite a bit. And right now, we have approximately 800 total registrations for the Academy across the district. Some things that you might see during the before or after school programs. We have different individuals that take on different roles. We have teachers that lead activities, and we also have adult helpers that help support those activities. The teachers are expected and do a great job of letting me know what their lessons are going to be ahead of time. They submit a calendar to me before every month, and it tells me which activities they're going to be doing on what days. So for me, it's nice because I know the things that are going on at the programs. Obviously, I can't be at every school at once. So it's nice to know what's going on and where it's going on. And for me, too, I like to be visible. So if I'm out and about and I want to go pop into an after-school program, I can look at those calendars and say, hey, there's something cool, really cool going on over at the Doll Bear that I want to go check out. So it kind of almost dictates how I spend part of my afternoon going to the different sites. We also have significant additional staff, adult staff, to help keep that student to teacher, student to adult ratio very low. And we have a lot of high school kids helping us out, and they do this either for pay or as part of their community service hours that they need for graduation. If you were to walk into one of our before or after school programs, some of the things you'd see, obviously there would be some athletic things going on, arts and crafts. Every after-school program has a homework support component built into their daily schedule. So all kids, while it's not strictly, they spend the whole time doing homework, every kid in every after-school program has access to some homework support for a portion of the time that they attend. And we utilize the playground and the gym as well as the computer lab. Enrichment, back in September when I was first here, I talked about that's where I really wanted to focus most of my attention on, giving kids opportunities that meet all of their needs. We've been, I feel like, kind of limited to some of the things that we could offer kids just because, historically Wakefield Academy programs, enrichment programs in particular, have just been taught by the current teachers and adult staff in the Wakefield Public Schools. And they all do a great job, and they have a lot of great interests, and they run some great programs, but it wasn't really tapping into every single kid and things that they might be interested in. So right off the bat, I formed a partnership with the Wakefield Recreation Department. Dan McGrath and I have the same vision. Everything that I'm saying about wanting to give kids opportunities, Dan shares that vision. So we've spent a lot of time working together so that we can offer kids more programs. So what basically happens is Dan, he has access to a lot of outside contractors that will come in and they will run their programs through Wakefield Academy. Dan really wants to get the rec department more involved with the schools. He wants to create a little bit of a link there with the school population. And I can give him that opportunity, and he gives me the opportunity to really offer kids more. So it's really worked out to be a great working relationship. He has more accessibility to facilities and gets his foot in the door at the schools. And, you know, like I said, we share the same vision. We're two separate organizations, so we could either compete against each other or we could work together. And we immediately decided, let's work together. We have the same ideas. We want what's best for these kids. So that's the route that we chose to take. And, you know, any profits that come in from our programs are split between us. And at the end of the day, right at the bottom there, the most important thing is that the kids are benefiting from this relationship that we have. Some enrichment programs that you see here would be ones that you find at our elementary schools. The ones with an asterisk next to them indicate programs that are offered through the rec department. They've been wildly successful. Most of them sell out, for lack of a better term, very quickly, which to me is great because we can just keep adding. We can just see that there's a constant demand for these programs, so we just keep trying to come up with new ideas and new program offerings for the kids. At the Galvin Middle School, I looked at the middle school as really an untapped resource when I took this position. I know that the construction of the new school and the transition into that new school had really had a pretty significant effect on the types of programs that could be offered. You know, they lost their gym, they lost their fields for a couple of years, so they were really limited in what they could offer. But now that we have this great state-of-the-art facility with these new fields and a new gymnasium, I looked at the Galvin Middle School and I said, this is where we're going to do the most work right here. And obviously, having been a teacher at the middle school throughout my entire career, it holds a special place to me, and you know, especially that age group. So I definitely wanted to make sure I was giving those kids who maybe didn't have all those opportunities over the last few years the chance to really access different programs that they would benefit from. Currently, right now, we have 15 programs going at the Galvin Middle School during this first winter session. And again, the ones that you see an asterisk next to up there indicate that they are run through the rec department. The flag football program, I'll talk a little bit about that, was able to come back. We had over 150 kids participate in the flag football program. It was, you know, it's great because it's on the brand new Mullen Field. It's right on Main Street. And, you know, the whole town can see what's going on, and it's really, really fun. All right, so just a couple pictures, give you an idea of some of the programs. This is from the rec department. These are their programs. This is our Culinary Kids program, which is a cooking class for elementary and middle school students. This here is shot in the Woodville School. An archery program, which has been wildly popular as well. Does it indoors during the winter, and as you can see, outdoors during the warmer months. We have a fencing program at the Galvin right now. We utilize one of the new project rooms. There's a nice big space for kids to get involved with that. It's really fun. This was a parkour. This one had me a little bit nervous. We have a parkour program. It was a weekend program, 2 days earlier in the year, where they set it up in the new gym at the Galvin, and it was awesome. I sat around for both days and watched what they were doing, and the kids just had an absolute blast, and it was really fun, and that's one of them that I'm hoping to bring back at some point. And again, archery and more of the parkour. And what we have for our in-house programs, these are the programs that are being run by teachers and adult staff throughout the district. This right here, you may recognize the gentleman in the top left, Mr. Boyd Sr. He's been running a after-school sports program at the Greenwood for years. Very popular over there. He does that with another high school adult. Let's see. This is a newer one. This is called Mexican Fiesta. This is like a cultural exploration program being offered at the middle school right now. What you're seeing here is students making piñatas out of Mylar balloons. And there's a picture of our flag football kiddos. And there's an art club that we had going on over at the Walton making things for Halloween. And that's actually a pretty cool picture. I walked into MG Fitness not too long ago, and I had this idea of coming up with a strength and conditioning program for our older middle school students. This kind of ties into working with Brendan to give kids a head start when it comes to strength and conditioning, so that when they get to the high school, they are familiar with those types of activities, because obviously that's a big piece of the high school athletic programs. I remember being a high school football player and not knowing anything about weight training and conditioning until I showed up the first day of practice. So this gives kids at least 1 or 2 years, if they're interested in getting some on-site physical training in, and we have this run by a couple of our middle school teachers, both of which are also members of the high school football coaching staff. And we've also expanded to the high school. Wakefield Academy, virtually non-existent in Wakefield High School in the past. I feel like I'm very fortunate because the high school consists of a lot of my former students, and I think as soon as I took this role, a lot of the kids started to come out of the woodwork and thought maybe I could help them do something that they really wanted to do, and that's great. That's what I was hoping would happen. So we do have a number of high school clubs that are up and running and others that are in the works right now. We have an Italian club, a fashion club. We have a mindfulness club. This is one of my favorite ones. This is run by 2 of the high school teachers, and it's all about helping kids to deal with anxiety, to get better focus. It's not quite meditation. It's not quite yoga. It's kind of somewhere in between, I feel like. And this is something that was so important to me, just knowing how stressful being a high school student can be between academics, athletics, and any other extracurriculars that you're involved with. This was so important to me that I wanted to make sure that we could offer this to all kids at Wakefield High School free of charge, which is what we've been able to do. So all kids at Wakefield High School have access to this to help them out if needed. It's not something they have to register for, they can just pop in. A gardening club, this was a great one. One of those former students that came to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Boyd, we want to start a gardening club. It's basically a beautification project at Wakefield High School." So they've already been out in the courtyard planting things. We had the DPW in there, and they pulled out a couple of old bushes that were just eyesores. And this spring, we're hoping to see a lot of the things that they planted come up, and then they're going to continue on with their work there. We have a coding program for girls that's in the works. There's now running a communications club, which is designed to help kids with their communication skills after high school, both in college and in the workforce. An archery club. This is different from the archery program being run at the middle and elementary schools. These are kids that have a background in archery and wanted to start a club up. An engineering club is just starting up. We have a Spanish club, and we're in the works with an intramural basketball club. A group of boys came to me and they said, "Mr. Boyd, we really miss not being able to play basketball anymore. We used to play in the WBA during middle school, and then it's either, you play for the high school team and that's it." So they were looking for some type of an organized basketball organization to run, and that's what we're hoping to offer them very soon. These are some special programs that we're offering. We have a February vacation camp starting next week, obviously. That's gone over very well. Past years have had about 75 enrollments across the district. Right now we have 125. And that will be for grades pre-K all the way through grade 6. I expect a similar program for the April vacation, and we also have plans in the works for a summer program, which is going to look quite different than it has in summers past, and that's been a great experience planning for. I hope to have more information on the summer program next month. It's been really a collaborative effort with special ed director, the facilities director, and a few other people in the system. And coming up, we have the Parent University in March at the Galvin Middle School. I guess Wakefield Academy has traditionally offered a child care service during the Parent University, which is great because one of my goals at the beginning of the year as part of my entry plan was to have a Wakefield Academy fair. And when I had this idea, I really didn't understand the fluidity of the programming that Wakefield Academy offers and how it can look like one thing now and another thing 2 months from now. So I'm using the Parent University as an opportunity to really kind of showcase what some of the things are that we're doing at the Academy. So what I have are a number of the people that run programs through Wakefield Academy. They're going to come in. We're going to have the kids grouped by their age, and we're gonna cycle them through. These folks are coming in and donating their time and resources. It's a win-win for both of us. It's a win for Wakefield Academy because it's gonna help promote our programs, and it's a win for these organizations because obviously it's helping build awareness for their programs as well. So that's an exciting thing that we're working on right now. So one of the major roles that I've also taken on, I feel like, in the district involves the crisis protocol. We operate at before and after school. Every school has its own crisis manual. I'm a member of the district-wide crisis team, and unfortunately, whenever you're running an after-school program, whether it be through Wakefield Academy, one of Brendan's athletic programs, visual performing arts, WBA, Scouts, GED, anybody that uses our facilities, they're not necessarily being run by Wakefield Public School employees who would be familiar with the crisis plans that are in place for that particular school. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've developed a plan for the extended day programs, particularly for those run by folks who are not Wakefield Public School employees, a protocol for their programs in the time of crisis. So it's a user-friendly resource to guide instructors if they're ever faced with a crisis, and again, to be utilized by all the different organizations that might be overseeing children in our district using our facilities. And just so you can see, this is an example of one of them. This is the one that I developed for the Galvin Middle School. In the green at the top, it's a little blurry, but it's all the contacts that they would need in a time of crisis with the phone numbers, which I whited out for obvious reasons tonight. In the yellow, we have a shelter-in-place protocol. This is basically all the different protocols that you would see in a crisis plan, just broken down and just so that they can see what that language would indicate in a time of crisis, should we need to initiate one of them. Each school has an evacuation map. Each school has an assigned evacuation site or sites. This map provides the addresses and directions on how to get there. That's spelled out in red as well, step by step, how to get there. Lockdown procedures in blue, reunification, if we have to evacuate and families need to come and pick their kids up, the process for reunifying them with their families is there. A shelter-in-place protocol, if we have to go into a shelter-in-place, these are the steps that they would follow. And maybe just as important is down at the bottom, I put in every school has AEDs located somewhere in them. And that last box on the bottom in black indicates exactly where those can be found in every single building. So my hope is to get these in the hands of anybody running any kind of an extended day program across the district specific to each school. And right now I've presented these to the district-wide crisis team. They're in the hands of each school's representative and they're being reviewed. And this is something that I would hope that we can get out to the different programs using our facilities by the end of the school year. And one of the things that I've also kind of determined based on my participation in the district-wide crisis team is one of the areas of need across the district is our communication systems, especially outside of the regular school hours. In most schools, particularly the older buildings, if parents or anybody is trying to communicate in to one of the programs taking place inside the school after the office staff has left for the day, most cases they're unable to do so. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going around and doing site visits to do an assessment of the communication systems currently in place at each school. I'm speaking with the principals at the schools, the secretaries at the schools to see what their radio system looks like, what product they're using, what their needs are, what they like about the product. And then what I would like to do is, because I already have volunteer administrators from each school in place, is to come together and share those findings with them and determine moving forward what is that communication system going to look like. For Wakefield Academy, it's going to be a huge piece of just our safety protocols, being able to radio and communicate especially you look at a school like the high school or the Galvin, where we've got programs going on in all different areas of the building and out on the fields. Being able, if God forbid we ever did run into a crisis situation, being able to communicate to everybody anywhere in the building is really essential in ensuring the safety of all students and staff. So that's something that Wakefield Academy right now feels prepared to help with. It's going to benefit us, obviously, because it's a serious safety issue right now, and safety is my #1 priority. And it's also something that's going to benefit the school, each school during the regular school day. And that would be all.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions? Mr. Callahan?
I'm always amazed at how many balls you guys have to keep up in the air for this program. From the day it started, so it's gotta be probably 10 years ago now, probably close. It's amazing how many different things are going on all at the same time. It's a lot to coordinate. I commend you for
Thank you.
stepping in and being able to grab a hold of it.
Thank you.
This communication thing, though, that's not a new problem, and I thought it was resolved a few years ago with cell phone distribution.
So here's the problem with the cell phones. I have my personal phone is an AT&T cell phone. It works great at the Galvin. I walk into the high school, I might as well not even have it. For the academy, I was issued a cell phone as well. That has Verizon for service. If I walk into the high school, I get great service. I go back over to the Galvin, might as well have left it at the high school. So cell phones, that was the first thing that I looked into, and I took both phones. I was just lucky enough to have an AT&T and a Verizon. I took them around to different schools, and it really was almost comical. Like every single school, one of them would work, and the other one would have nothing. So that, I know that the previous director had gone out and purchased cell phones and had a plan set up for all the different site coordinators. And half of them loved it, and the other half didn't. They didn't love it because it didn't work. Right. And it's frustrating, you know. Parents try to call, they have a number that they're given to call, and they're trying to get through, and there's no way to get through because there's no signal. You look at some of the older buildings, such as the Doyle and the Walton School. They're two examples of when the office staff goes home. That's it. There is no way to communicate into the people working at the academy. The only direct line into that school is in that main office, and that's locked. So I've worked with the IT people, both for the Wakefield Public Schools and for the town, and part of this whole process is going to be in those particular schools, we're going to put a direct phone line in for the academy where they'd be located after school and before school. So that's why we thought the cell phones wouldn't work. I would love to have a direct line in at every school, which at most schools there are, but like I said, Doyle and Walton do not. And really the only reason that the Greenwood School is able to have access to a direct landline is because the site coordinator over there is the office secretary. So had she not had that position, we'd probably be locked out of there as well. So it's really important that parents have a means to communicate in. And, you know, it's something, it came up once already this year. A parent tried to, didn't know where her kid was.
It's a terrible feeling as a parent.
Horrible feeling. I felt terribly for her. So she calls me, and I'm trying, so I'm like, all right, well, I'll call over there. And what's the point of me calling over? If she can't get through, I can't get through. And sure enough, I couldn't get through. So next thing, I'm driving over there to check and see. Long story short, the kid was fine. He was accounted for. But yeah, I mean, that's a tough experience, I can imagine, for a parent wondering where their kid is. That's the first piece, and then not being able to get an answer. So that's certainly not something that we want to run into in the future, and so we're going to work toward resolving that with this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yes.
So thank you. My first question goes to Chris's analysis of all the balls in the air. So it's about program development, right? So how do you, I love the idea of, that you articulated around the kids from the high schools coming to you and saying, this is what we want, right? So that's one way that you facilitate and start programs. I'm sure you're talking to parents all the time. Talk a little bit about your process, like during the course of the year. Do you meet with staff and and obviously Dr. Smith and others, to kind of take a big picture look at what programs are needed, what are necessary, what are the desired programs from each school, and then how do you allocate your resources accordingly?
Absolutely. So just today even, I sent an email to every single school. We're right now in the middle of our first winter session of programs, so I'm now looking ahead to the second winter session to start in March. And I sent a communication out to all staff at every single school, specific to their school, saying, hey, this is what we're doing right now. I'm looking ahead to the next cycle. If anybody would be interested, there's a proposal form that they would fill out. It's very simple. And I put specific needs down in there. I know that there's a need. This is talking to Dr. Hughes at the Doll Bear for like having a math enrichment. Something as simple as just like computer math games. And then we also have, obviously the SATs coming up. That's something that I'm going to look into as a potential program to help kids prepare for at the high school. That could be run by a high school teacher that we currently have in place. So yeah, those are things I'm constantly putting out there, what we're doing and what we're looking for and how you can get involved. We've had a great response, as I showed during the slideshow, that, we have far more programs than we ever have. That's due in large part to the willingness of the adults that we have in our district to run these programs. And it's all, for me, just about communicating out, what our needs are and, what we're already offering and how well it's doing, so.
Great, thanks. So the other side is program evaluation. So how do you define a successful program? And how does that definition inform how you plan for the coming year, for the next cycle of programs?
So I've recently developed Google Forms, which I plan on beginning to implement at the end of this session. I've been working for the first couple sessions to kind of really consider what are some of the things that I want to gather information on. So I have a handful of questions to give to the students involved, the parents of those students, and the instructors themselves, because I want to gather feedback from all those parties. And for me, the ultimate goal is that every kid is going to gain something out of these programs, and the nature of the questions in this survey pretty much surround whether or not that happened. Did they develop intellectually, emotionally, somehow, thanks to their participation in these programs? And based on that feedback, I'm going to be able to really kind of gauge the effectiveness of the programs and work with the instructors and the site coordinators at each school to develop even better programs and improve the ones that we currently have in place.
That's great, thank you. And that's the kind of information that the school committee would love to see at some point too. Maybe a year from now, you can share some of that with us.
Yeah, I'm hoping by the end of this school year
yeah.
to have collected a whole lot of data from every school and every program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Markham?
Thank you. And, well, Mr. Boyd, congratulations on this, on not only this report, but what has obviously gone into it. You certainly have taken Wakefield Academy to another level in a very, frankly, short period of time.
Thank you.
The school committee was particularly focused on studying some of the ins and outs of Wakefield Academy a couple of years ago. And we pulled apart some of the financing pieces of that, and I think Mr. Randall brought it to a new place, and you've, in a very short period of time, just exploded. So this is really, this and you, frankly, are the shot in the arm that Wakefield Academy needs. So,
Thank you.
So thank you for that work, and
Thank you.
congratulations. The high school is something that's it's a very exciting place for it.
Yeah, I'm really excited
Oh,
to
that's
see
great.
things continue to grow at the high school. That's the age where kids are really starting to kind of like find their niche and figure out, what do I want to do, looking ahead. And it shouldn't just be limited to, the traditional things that have been in place at the high school level. We want them to have the opportunity to explore those things.
And that was something that when we were talking a couple of years ago, which I think, Fred did some good work on, and even building it at the Galvin, is that these kids had a great experience historically at the elementary schools. They were part of Wakefield Academy part of the before-school program, after-school program, and then there was almost nothing at the Galvin for the longest time. And then that's grown, and now you've got this crop of kids between elementary and middle, and now you've got to be, you know, sharing that experience, or sharing a trademark, not only the credibility of the name, but the creativity behind, you know, what would you like this to be? So that's some great stuff. Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you
Boyd.
very
Thank you.
much.
Anyone else? Great, thank you.
And I'd also just like to thank Jeff. What has really struck me is the collaboration with the Town Recreation Department, Wakefield Athletics. He's just done a phenomenal job with that, the creativity and expanding those programs. I was at a meeting at the Galvin Middle School not long ago, and in the middle of the meeting, this announcement came over, and I had to stop the meeting and say, did they just say the fencing program is about to begin? I was just so struck at so the range of activities. And I also want to just give Mr. Boyd kudos on his participation on the district crisis team. I think he's understating his leadership on that committee so far. He's really become an essential leader on the district crisis team. So I really appreciate his help with that. So,
Logo's cool, too.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next piece on my agenda is just to give you a super quick update on the district calendar for 2016-17. Just want to assure you that it's in the works. We've done some work so far. We're putting together a committee of teachers and administrators under the direction of Assistant Superintendent Doug Lyons in the month of February to look at a few of the details and just get some feedback on some of the details. But right now, we're just trying to nail down the first day and the last day, which is what everyone wants to know the most. So it looks like we're hovering around Wednesday, September 7th as our proposed first day, and which would make the last day somewhere around, pointing to it's about roughly around June 15. And then really making sure that all of the religious holidays are very clear in this calendar. That small subcommittee is going to take a look at parent-teacher conferences and give us some feedback on where professional development falls. So it should be ready to bring to you as a recommended calendar in March. So I just want to give everyone an update on that, let you know that that is underway. And then the last thing on my agenda is to give you a budget update. I just feel like it's very important that each step of the way, I'm keeping you up to date with my thinking and planning, and as I'm developing the proposed or recommended FY17 budget. So I just want to add today, I did give you a handout, but that at this time, this evening, the point of this evening is not really to talk specifically about financials. That will come at our next meeting, but more to help you understand where I am in terms of budget planning and some of the philosophical underpinnings of what's happening. And so I handed out some things and a couple of things from your packet. So I'll just walk you through just to keep everybody up to speed with where we are. So in your packet, then kind of where I left off from last time was that I had done the state of the schools and budget forums. The school and district leaders had given me those emerging priorities or needs, and that's where I had asked all of the stakeholders to provide input on those. So in your packet, I provided you with the chart to show you what the stakeholders had to say. And in terms of respondents, we had 144 community respondents and 96 educator respondents. And you'll see on the graph that this shows you the percentage of community and educator respondents that chose each of the budget priorities as listed by school leaders. So kind of just to highlight, it's very clear by looking at the chart, you can see what those points were. But to kind of highlight them, the educators in the district, very interested in time for collaboration and planning. That's very, very important to educators in their practice in moving student learning forward. So that was the top vote getter there, or priority. And then just about anything that had to do with supports and interventions for students, for struggling students, or giving students access. So those were some of the priorities of the educators. And then in our community, just you can really see that technology and STEM education are really important to parents and community members. More instructional time. And then an interesting point was many community members communicated that they're interested in the math coaches, which I thought was really interesting. And at first glance, I kind of wondered a little bit about what that was about, but it could be in part that we have a brand-new math curriculum, and parents are probably struggling at home, as well as kids struggling at home a little bit, and really looking for support around the math curriculum in all of our schools.
They might not have understood the question.
What's that?
They might not have understood the question, but they might have considered the coaches for the students and not for the teachers.
Well, I think I articulated, for those who were there, I think I articulated it pretty well at the community forum, I think, and hopefully the breakout sessions we did. But I was speaking very enthusiastically about the impact that literacy coaches have had on instruction, and sometimes, your own passion and enthusiasm may have also prompted some of those responses. So, but at any rate, that was a favored response. So that was just really interesting. So, and then, of what I gave you tonight, just to take a peek at, is two significant budget drivers in terms of my thinking. You'll see in the top 2 pages are the 3-tier model of student support, which I've spoken about a little bit before, and I'll just touch upon again quickly, and then instructional technology. I think in looking at the overlap of the needs of what the educators are saying and what community is saying. But if you look at just the 3-tier model of support again, just remembering that what we're talking about is both on the academic learning side of schooling and the social emotional learning side, and how the overlap or what the intersection is between the two of them, and that our goal is to support all student success in a general education classroom. And for the vast majority of students, that happens in that tier 1 space. And the supports and interventions that are needed for both students and teachers to help kids be successful. And then the tier 2 is that sort of extra supports that are necessary. And then tier 3 is a very small number of students may also require some substantially separate supports for them to access learning in the general education classroom. But just kind of a reminder about that, you'll hear me refer to that over and over again. So my feeling is, with limited financial resources available, if I'm placing a priority somewhere, it needs to squarely fit on these triangles. It needs to be, to fit in with that 3-tier model. And frankly, instructional technology does, because technology is a way of differentiating, personalizing, and individualizing instruction. So, so that fits right into that model as well. So going to the next page, again, I'm not going to speak about the specifics of financials tonight, but just to give you a snapshot of some of the big budget areas and where we are right now, as Mike and I have spent many, many hours together in the last couple of weeks. I've been working him really, really hard. He's going to need a vacation soon. We did what I would call the fine-tooth comb, which is really going line by line. But I think maybe what I'd highlight on this page is, as we looked at some of the big areas, for those of you who've been with me in recent budget subcommittee meetings, you'll see that the bottom line has gone down. And the way that we got to that, in the last week, I've spent several hours with Steve Mayo, town administrator, and today Mike and I spent time with him again. And really what we talked a lot about was special education, and really the role of in the school department budget and in the town, of how we can really function well with making special education work. And I think we all know that those escalating costs in special education, very hard to predict, very hard to manage. So the number on this sheet, or the percentage, has come down considerably just in our conversations about how we will use the operating budget for special education costs and planning for increases, and then how we would use the stabilization fund for those unexpected costs, for those that we can't predict. And we really just talked about how much do we budget for in our operating budget in the school department. What makes sense? This number shows us somewhere between 6% and 7%, and at some point, you have to say, those are the real numbers. That's the kind of the known expenses And then at that point, maybe that's the place that you stop and say that's where we would go to the stabilization fund, should we need to. And those are the conversations we've been having over this last week. And that actually, when we targeted that one area, that actually brought really the whole bottom line down. So it's just something for you to kind of look at and think about it. Of course, on the 23rd, when I do, which is at our next meeting, when I present my recommended budget, you'll get all of the many, many details in the budget book in much greater detail. And then the next 2 pages is just, I've shared this out with both Budget Subcommittee and Labor Subcommittee, and then because Mr. Tiro was the only one not on either of those 2 committees, he and I just sat down to make sure he was up to speed, because I wanted our whole committee to be well-informed about just my, philosophically, how I'm planning around the budget. And so just a super brief review of what that looks like. First, one of the first things that I did was really looking at where can we reallocate money within to get to some of the new needs that we have. And so an example of that you can see on this page is we know that in order to take the next step, the phase 2 of our district instructional technology plan, what might be a way we can do that within the budget currently. And one of the things I've felt strongly about all along is we need to really start looking at cutting our expenses around paper, getting greener. Pencils, pens, staplers, staples, the things that go along with becoming a more technologically efficient district and using instructional technology in the classroom. So making some cuts in those lines, and I've been communicating to the principals what that will look like. And what that will do is that will allow us to take that second phase of infusing money into instructional technology as part of a 3-phase plan, so that we will become, within our own operating budget, we will become self-sufficient and not reliant on capital expenditures in order to have an ongoing, long-term plan for teacher and student device replacement on a regular cycle, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, really, now our devices are our paper and pencils, and so we really need to take ownership over those, and that's the plan. You'll also see, as kind of our reallocated of money, when I think about those 3 tiers, I am committed to hiring highly qualified, certified teachers to provide those interventions and support for our students who are struggling academically, or so in the social emotional learning space, and that when we reallocate, the focus should be on always upping the services that we're providing to those students. Then the second big bucket that I worked with is revenue offsets. What new revenues are we bringing into the district, and how those might offset additional needs that I'd like to add to our budget. So, the first example is in our new partnership with Lesley University. We're bringing in new revenue. And so that's a place that I really look to say we really need to think about the social, emotional, and behavioral health. And that is something we have never had a budget line for. And there are different items in there, including bringing in psychology interns, the interface our relationships, the youth risk behavior survey, and a number of things that are really important to us in social, emotional, behavioral health. So looking at how I can fund those through new revenue streams. So that's that bucket. On the next page, I just talk a little bit about where the additions might come. That'll be just new money. And one piece I'll just point to this week is adding a counselor at the Galvin Middle School. I think that's really important, because that's a perfect example of something that cuts across both triangles, the academic side and the social emotional learning side, in that tier 1 place, and how critical that is at the Galvin Middle School right now, that when students are struggling, who attends to those children in terms of getting them what they need. So really just thinking about in the budget additions, again, you'll see that things fall squarely on the 3 tiers of intervention. We'll get into more details next time. But the key drivers to the budget right now, special education, which I've already mentioned, Salaries, really looking right now at our contractual obligations. And then, of course, we're entering into collective bargaining with all of our units. So really planning for that is tricky. But we're really spending a lot of thoughtful time on figuring out how to do that. And then utilities, I think you've been hearing Mike every month telling us about the electricity costs and the new Galvin School and what we can expect and what we might need to add into the coming budget to make sure we're attending to that. I made a kind of that cautionary note in that we're watching very carefully enrollments, particularly kindergarten registration. I just think we'll have to continue watching that even long after the recommended budget is proposed, because that's an ongoing process that really takes us all the way to the opening of school. The numbers are still coming in. Some of those numbers are a little bit tight, so I'm just watching that very, very carefully. Just wanted to let you know about that. And then the next page, again, just looking at new revenue to the district, things like the anticipated circuit breaker, the recent tuition increase at the Doyle, and how those revenues help us to provide better services in the district. New revenue to the town. I just think one thing that's important for everyone to know, if you haven't already, I'm sure you've probably all been reading the news, but the governor's preliminary budget does show a good jump or increase in Chapter 70 funding, for Wakefield. And that really specifically is due to really two things. One, our increase in student enrollment, and the per pupil increase has been hovering at about $25 per pupil the last few years, and that's jumped up to 37 or 38, I think, Mike, does that sound about right? $38 per pupil, so kind of those two things combined has helped us, that more money will be coming into the town, which is always a help. And again, it's a preliminary budget. There's still some steps that we have to take, but that's just some good news for the town of Wakefield. So they just, and then, just kind of gave you a snapshot of a 5-year review of where we've been and where we're going. And then, so the next steps, I hope that's just helpful to you. Again, like just to kind of, I want to think out loud, just be really transparent about what I'm thinking, what we've been doing. We've already met once, Mike and I, with the Finance Committee Subcommittee. We've met several times with the School Committee Budget Subcommittee. This week, we're meeting with both of those groups again. I think tomorrow is Finance Committee Subcommittee, and Budget is Friday. So we have more conversations to happen there. At our next school committee meeting, we'll have the full budget book, my recommended budget, and presentation. Then the first week of March, that will give people to begin to give us feedback. On March 2nd and 4th, I'll be putting together presentations for faculty and staff so that I'll review the presentation with faculty and staff in the district and give them an opportunity to give me some feedback on what they've heard and what they think. And then on March 8th, we'll do our public hearing at this meeting to give the community an opportunity and parents an opportunity to talk to us about what they've heard. And then, of course, we're looking at the school committee vote on March 22nd. So there's still a long way to go, but I just really wanted to share with you where I am right now. I really just believe in no surprises, so I just wanted to just keep everybody up to date the very best I can. So I hope that's helpful to you as we proceed in the process. And I believe that's all I have today.
Great.
Thank you.
Business reports.
I have to say, it's very disheartening to follow Brendan and Jeff and now Kim with the budget, and I just got some formal reports. So. To briefly go through the reports, salaries, again, continue to be of no concern right now. We continue to be trending in the right direction on salaries. I'll hit the highlights. Transportation obviously continues to be a little bit of a concern, especially with the out-of-district, as well as us having to add another bus this year in our regular day transportation to handle the increase in student ridership. In addition, the town's already offset our budget by $60,000 in user fees, and I can expect another $30,000 in user fees to offset to that number. So that won't be so bad. Utilities, you'll notice on utilities and heating fuel, I think last month I may have run the reports before I had unencumbered the money for last month, so those numbers are coming back into line a little bit. Electricity is still about $85,000 off the mark, but on the plus side, heating fuel has been has been a wonderful thing this warm winter, so.
Let's see what happens this weekend.
Let's see what happens. Well, we don't have to heat the building so much on the weekends. Extraordinary maintenance, you'll notice that that number took a drastic change. That was because of the completion of Post Academy. We did pay up our final bills with the contractors at Post Academy, so that number took a little bit of a dip there. And line 16, instructional supplies, you'll notice that number's in the negative right now. However, we did just receive our check from the leasing company for our first year of 3 years of leases, or we bought all the equipment, they pay us back now, we cut them a check for a third of it, and a third each year for the next 3 years, so. That number will go back to the positive after that check deposits, so we'll be good. Any questions on the monthly? Good. We typically don't touch base on the locations. I'll go right over to the grant accounts, nothing substantial to report on grant accounts this month. And regarding revolving, highlights, the building rental, we are expecting payments from WBA and Leslie University. Both of those two payments should bring us back into the black, so that's a plus there. Preschool tuition is trending in the right direction, although still negative because of the encumbrances. And circuit breaker is somewhat of a savior to us in the special education this year. So right now, everything's looking pretty bright on the financial side of the Wakefield Public Schools.
Thank you. Anyone have questions? Great. Subcommittee reports, budget. Mr. Callahan.
We met last week, it was Wednesday, right? And went over a lot of the materials that Dr. Smith presented tonight, and are really getting to the point where we're just really fine-tuning the last bit before it comes before the full committee at our next meeting. So we're meeting this Friday morning at 7.
Thank you. Mr. Kenny.
We have a meeting scheduled, everybody.
What?
I think, the 24th. Yeah.
That's not what I was expecting.
I know. I succeeded for once. So the 24th, I think it was. Are we good with that? I'm not sure if I ever heard back from you folks. Good with the 24th? Excellent. Then progress awaits.
Nice.
Just be sure it gets
Labor,
posted.
Mr. Markham.
Yeah.
We're in the thick of many things. I can report a good progress. We have meetings scheduled through March the 30th with all groups now. We will engage for the first time our Unit C, the first Monday back, Monday, February 22. And with Unit C, we will have engaged the groups. One thing I wanted to ask of the chair and suggest, if we could, for the school committee meeting on Tuesday, March 8th, it may or may not work, but if we could consider an executive session.
Sure.
It's about that time where we should be at a place where we can provide some substantive meat, if you will, to the full committee.
Great.
And so if that would be something we could add to that night's agenda.
Will do.
Before or after?
I would suggest after, but
I think after.
certainly
Okay.
I'm open to whatever your choice is.
After. Policy, Mr. Tiara.
Nothing new, other than today I reached out to the subcommittee and the administration, and we're scheduling a meeting.
Great. School committee comments, Mr. Kenny.
I'm all set. Thanks.
Mr. Tiara.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Callahan.
Just a reminder that this Sunday is the Scholarship Foundation Jazz Breakfast at Bear Hill Country Club. It's usually a nice morning. It's a very casual breakfast. You can kind of come and go. It's not stuck with any particularly set times, but certainly supports a very good cause.
Mr. Markham.
If I could do a plug, the 8th grade students who are doing their trip to Washington, D.C., are having sort of a March Madness fundraiser. So if you happen to know of any 8th grade students, or if anyone knows a school committee member who has an 8th grade student, it'd be more than willing to sell you a ticket. So just a plug for the 8th grade fundraiser.
Thank you. Mr. Liakos.
Nothing. Thanks.
Anything else? Great.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Move that the school committee adjourns its meeting of February 9th, 2016.
Second.
Third, fourth.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Voted unanimously.